that a parent can't access the information that would give their kids access to this program, which I heard a lot from, some parents couldn't understand how an ESA would work, and therefore low socioeconomic parents or demographics would not benefit from this. That is such an absolutely ridiculous statement to assume that a parent doesn't want what's best for their child, or even worse, assumes that the parent can't access that information. It's absolutely mind-blowing and ridiculous. And it's why we fight to do what we do. Is that I was quoted in the paper this morning, actually, that at AFP, we don't just work on electing policy champions. We also work year-round to ensure that parents are connected to what's happening so that they have that information, they can access the opportunities for their kids, and they can hold their legislator accountable.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
Well, thanks for being with us on American Potential. We talk a lot about education savings accounts here and how state after state really is making significant, amazing, incredible reform for the kids in their states. And around 30 states have seen a very significant shift in education and how it is accessed and delivered by allowing families to have school choice. As education savings accounts, or ESAs, are starting to become the norm for some states, other states are working on offering ESAs to families so they can select the best education that suits their family's needs. Well, today, we're going to talk about ESAs, but this episode is going to be a little bit different than previous episodes because we're going to talk about how in one state this issue played a role in the state's primaries. Last September, we did an episode with Cindy Nix and Genevieve Collins from Texas to talk about Americans for Prosperity's efforts to get ESAs passed last year. Well, we were able to talk to them before a special session that was held to address a few things, including ESAs. Now, unfortunately, it didn't pass. But because of that, Americans for Prosperity Texas focused on getting policy champions elected in the primaries and runoff elections to give families a better chance of getting ESAs passed. I want to welcome back Genevieve Collins, who is Americans for Prosperity's state director in the great state of Texas. Genevieve, welcome back.
Jeff, thanks for having me. Love being on this program.
Well, listen, the landscape has changed a little bit on ESAs since we last spoke, and it wasn't by chance. It was because of some very hard work by you and some other folks. Let's talk about first what happened to educational savings accounts last session. Let's remind folks what happened there.
Well, in Texas, this has been a 40-year battle to give school choice to all Texas students. This has been something that was a decade ago considered radioactive to talk about school choice or vouchers. And thankfully, the winds across the country have really shifted, and they've finally come into Texas to say, well, if it can happen in Iowa or Utah or Arkansas or West Virginia, why not Texas? So we had Texas is in session every other year, which is lovely for those of us who work here. We're not in a full-time legislature. However, school choice didn't pass in the regular session. That's from January to May. So the governor, this was a top priority for him. So he has the executive authority to call special sessions. Well, he called 4 of them. The first 2 special sessions were about passing property tax reform. That ended up happening. And then the last 2 special sessions, both in September through November, those were solely focused on school choice. And I will say, there was something incredibly exciting that happened last year in special session 4, that was in November, where school choice legislation actually passed out of the House Education Committee. That has never happened in the state of Texas before. And in both Americans for Prosperity and the Libre Initiative were a huge part of that effort. We brought 1,200 people to the Capitol every single day across 5 weeks, making sure that regular parents, students, grandparents, teachers, administrators, that their voices were heard and that they had a chance to represent why they wanted school choice. Now, it ended up dying on the House floor on November 17th, that this legislation did not pass. And I think it angered a whole lot of people, starting with the governor and me included. And we decided we were going to go make a difference about it.
Yeah. Well, what were some of the reasons that you were hearing from legislators and others for not supporting education savings accounts?
Well, there were 21 rural Republicans that banded with the Democrats who said that, first off, we don't hear in our district that people want this. We don't hear that we need school choice. We're already in small districts who are saying that they don't have enough money to educate their own kids, so why introduce competition? And the biggest false argument that all of these Democrats, as well as rural Republicans, were saying was that school choice would defund public schools, which we know is incredibly false. In Texas, we spend about $85 billion biannually on education, on K-12 education. So every 2 years, we spend about $85 billion. And we don't have good student outcomes to show for it. But that was the biggest argument against it that we heard.
Yeah. Well, and there's, of course, the other side of that. I'm sure you had amazing, incredible stories from families that supported ESAs, right?
We did. And we had kids, brave kids from a little school in San Antonio. Their monthly tuition is $345. It's a girl, her name was Maya. She was with our Libre grassroots engagement director, Riverside Academy, I think is what the school's called. And she said, in front of the chairman of the House Education Committee, she said, an education savings account would immediately impact and benefit my life and my family. My mom works 7 days a week to pay for my education. She works 5 days a week in a normal job, and then she cleans houses on the weekends. An ESA would let me see my mom and let me repay her for what she's done to provide a world-class education for me. This girl was 17 and had the bravery to say that to someone she didn't know, who also happened to be the chairman of the House Education Committee. It was an incredibly powerful moment. And we have 1,200 of those moments from activists and volunteers and passionate folks all across, parents and folks all across the state who just want the best for kids in Texas. And it was a really powerful moment where we were able to really bring the voice of Texas to the Capitol, and that changed hearts and minds.
Yeah, that's a great story, and I'm sure, as you said, you had many others, but it's just so frustrating to hear the argument from the other side of this. Here is this girl's family; they pay taxes, right? They pay taxes to fund public schools. But if they choose to send her to a different school, they get penalized for doing that. I mean, this is just so anti-freedom, and we've been doing it in America that way for so long. It's finally great to see these education savings accounts passing. Any thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like more and more elected officials are kind of understanding the injustice that's happened here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's certainly a lack of freedom, a lack of liberty. But I think more Texas legislators, I could say specifically, are seeing that we don't have good outcomes in K-12 education. We don't have safe schools in many public schools. And at the end of the day, it's straight up the kids that matter. It's not the system. It's not protecting some overbloated bureaucratic system where teachers are doing their best. It's not about that. It's about the kids. And more legislators are waking up and saying, I don't care what the system looks like. I care about the future of Texas, which are children, and making sure that those children are set up for success. This is not a zero-sum game. I can be for both students and schools. I don't have to choose one or the other. This is not a false choice. And more folks are waking up to that. And it's been really wonderful to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I love about what you did in Texas, I guess I should say what you all did in Texas. Y'all did in Texas. After ESAs didn't get passed, you just started focusing on getting policy champions in the state legislature, right?
Well, Jeff, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I wasn't angry. Anger can be a wonderful fuel for change.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
For 11 months last year, we have been working with bringing real people to tell their stories and testify at the Capitol. And to see this language, this bill die so ingloriously, it just made us angry. And I have to commend the governor. He really led the charge. He was full-throated in his opposition against anyone that voted against school choice. And me being a little spicy, like the rest of my team, we were all in. And we did something that we've never done before here in Texas. We focused on, in the primary, finding better candidates that supported school choice in addition to all of our other policy issues. And we focused on ensuring that those people got elected either in March during our Super Tuesday primary or last week in our runoffs in May 28th. And Jeff, our engagements this cycle were transformative because our teams got involved not only in identifying, but supporting, engaging, and talking to voters across 22 separate House districts. That is the largest engagement our team has ever been a part of. And the best part is that the outcome, our participation in these 22 races, we helped 19 pro-school choice candidates win their primary or runoff election. So we had 19 wins. Unfortunately, we had 3 losses. But 19-3, we helped transform the makeup of the Texas House of Representatives. And now we have the votes to pass school choice in 2025 without any Democrat support. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And, it's a great victory for the children of Texas and for the kids that have been stuck in these schools, some of these schools that they would like the opportunity to get out of some of these failing schools. So I imagine that left a bit of a boot mark on on people in politics in Texas. What's the reaction been?
Well, I will tell you, the governor's team, the lieutenant governor, and a bunch of the Austin inner city political folks, they have called me personally and said, "Oh my God, you guys helped boot 6, every single incumbent we challenged. We got every incumbent removed." And these incumbents were entrenched Republicans that have been in office for over 10 years. And every single one of those 6 people, we got them the boot and we replaced them with more dynamic, more interesting, more fully rounded candidates who are going to all pass school choice. So we have made quite the statement and said, you know what, we're going to put our muscle where our mouth is, and we're going to make sure that every constituent in the state of Texas knows that children matter, and we are going to be their first champions. We are the infantry. The Army isn't coming because we are the Army, and we are going to go win these elections. And we did. And so we've gotten a lot of press. We've gotten a lot of positive comments. We've also had a lot of haters come out. But listen, there's no point in being a part of this fight if you don't want a big target on your back. And here in Texas, I want the biggest target on my back, on my team's back, because that means we're doing something really right.
Yeah, well, you are doing great work. I'm sure that the teachers' unions are not, union bosses are not overly happy with you. And I'm sure some of these legislators, obviously that are out of office now, aren't very happy with it. But look, I mean, you going in and electing policy champions, and I guess they weren't policy champions just on educational savings account. Right. I mean, it sounds like you made a special focus on that. But these are policy champions in a number of other areas too, right?
Absolutely. Every single person that we endorse has to be pro-school choice, pro-healthcare reform, ensuring that patients can be turned into shoppers, focused on securing the border. Here in Texas, that matters a lot.
Yep.
Focused on reducing property taxes and reducing regulations for across local communities. This is all about limited government and unlimited opportunities. And if you're an obstacle to that, which a bunch of people were that were incumbents, we will remove you. And now we have a pretty sterling record to say, if you are against what we believe in, we will work to remove you. And we're not afraid to go, throw some hard punches.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is going to be, again, I think you'll have a great impact, not just on educational savings accounts in the legislature in Texas, but I think on a lot of other issues as well. Yeah. You just showed them you carry a pretty big stick, I think.
Well, I think I always think that I'm a very spicy. I mean, I'm an NCAA championship athlete. Like, if you're going to compete, you better bring all of your big guns with you, because I am coming with an army. And that's what people don't realize. With the AFP and the Libre Initiative, we are unleashing the most muscular and tactical grassroots army that the state's ever seen. We've been working over the last 2 years to build this monumental army that can go out and deploy in communities that they're neighbors with, and they can talk to people about the issues. And we're the first group that says, if you're going to try to come at us, we're going to bring an army and we will level you. And I just love that. I'm competitive. I want to win. And if we're not going to win on policy, we will beat you at the ballot box to ensure that next cycle we can win on policy.
There you go. All right. Now, how many of these policy champions who ran as candidates, some of them is their first time running for office, right?
Many of them. I mean, we had a ton of young women that were running. We had a ton of Hispanic candidates. We had everyone came from a business background. So it was a really diverse group of people who just said, you know what? I'm tired of my voice not being heard. And we said, well, that's exactly what we at AFP believe in. We are the platform to help give you a microphone to share your story, to share your voice. And we so happen to align on the issues. And so we had 6 brand new candidates, we had 10 brand new candidates that had never run for office before. We did have to end up saving a few incumbents. We challenged a bunch, but we also needed to save a few that were pro-school choice that were being challenged from the other side. And so we ended up having quite a array of candidates that we were supporting, but they all are pro-Texas, pro having a limited government, pro-school choice, and pro making sure we do right by kids. So it was a really fun, long 5 months.
Yeah. So when does Texas get another chance to try and pass education savings accounts?
Well, I think you can officially say that on November 5th, which is the general election date, we will know how many seats that we have. So we still have an opportunity in the general election to take even more seats. Right now in Texas, we have the Texas House of Representatives is made up of 150 members. In order to have a majority, you need 76 members to vote for a policy. Right now, we have 77 pro-school choice votes. We'd like to increase that margin so it's not so narrow thin. We'd like to increase that margin by 3. So that way, by the time we get into next year in January, we have a safer margin to pass school choice. So I think we'll know in November.
Well, I think, and it's interesting. I think a lot of people listening to this would say, Texas, why would this be hard in Texas? Texas is for liberty. Texas is for freedom. Why was this fight so difficult in the state of Texas?
So few people realize that Texas is made up of independent school districts. We don't operate by a county school structure. So in the state of Texas, we have over 1,200 unique school districts. Just for context or comparison, Texas has 1,200 school districts. Florida has 67. Okay. Wow. Now, all of the Florida school districts are quite large, But we have 1,200, which means think about the bloated bureaucracy. Every school district has its own athletic department, has its own administrative department. And there's over there's probably like 900 school districts in Texas that are comprised of 500 students or less. And they don't want to merge. The thing about Texas is that usually the school district is the largest employer in the community. And there's this feeling, this notion of fear and this need to have protectionism instead of competition. That it's okay that across 1,200 school districts in Texas, only 52% of our kids on 4th and 8th grade can read on grade level. And it's okay that only 43% of our 4th and 8th graders can do math on grade level. That's not okay. When you can't introduce competition and you're allowing bad outcomes to continue to stifle kids' futures, that's not acceptable. And that has to change. But that's what people don't want to change because they're protecting the system and they're afraid that if you introduce competition, whether it's homeschool, private school, charter school, micro schools, when you when you bring in that competition, you're going to remove funding from school districts. And it's all about the money and not about the kids. And we heard that time and time over. Every time someone from the school district testified, they were only concerned about losing money, not about the students that they were trying to serve.
Yeah. Yeah, this really is at its very base. It is a very simple thing. And it's a simple question about priorities. Do you prioritize the kid and their education, or do you prioritize a system or finances or, certain lines or political subdivisions? That's literally what this issue comes down to.
Right. And I don't think that it matters what demographic you come from, what socioeconomic status you are, you matter. Period. End of story. And my belief system around that, and AFP and Libre's belief system around that, just says we're not concerned about the money. We're concerned about the child mattering and having a world-class education, regardless of the four walls with which they find themselves within. The walls don't matter. It's the opportunities that every child should have.
Yeah. What do you, I think of the Hispanic population in Texas or any other state. I mean, this disproportionately, I think, some of these bad rules and the way that we've done K through 12 education in the past has disproportionately hurt the Hispanic community. And ESAs, educational savings accounts, are really a very valuable tool for Hispanic families to really make a choice about where they want to send their kids. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Jeff. Here in Texas, we are a majority state, right? So the Hispanic community is now larger. It's the largest community in the state of Texas. Prior to me being in the political arena, I spent 12 years in the education technology sector. And I can tell you, to validate your point, there was a time, and this still exists, I hope to a lesser degree, but Hispanic students were coming into Texas schools and they were automatically being placed into special education. Now that's against the law. Okay. Mm-hmm. So these Hispanic students were coming in and they were being automatically put into special education because they had a language barrier, not a literacy barrier. There's a massive difference in how a student is placed into a classroom. And we're disproportionately placing Hispanic students into special education, which is illegal, but it was happening because school districts didn't have enough bilingual teachers. B, they didn't know how to test or understand a student's literacy or mathematics skills in their native language. So they just automatically deferred these kids to special ed. We're not going to allow that. We're not going to tolerate that treatment of any child here in our state. We want every child to have a great education, and no child should be placed into special ed for 5, 8, 10 years because they were misdiagnosed as having a language issue. That's not right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. And
that's why
we always
school
have
choice matters. To your earlier point, forgive me.
Yeah, no, it does matter. And we have to remind ourselves public policy should be about individuals, right? It shouldn't be about groups of people. It ought to be about individuals. And we ought to create laws like ESAs that allow individuals to make choices within that give them the liberty and freedom to do what's best for them.
Right.
So,
well, and we honor their parents, parents from every demographic all want the same thing. They want something better for their kids than they got. And for anyone on any political ideology to assume that a parent can't access the information that would give their kids access to this program, which I heard a lot from, some parents couldn't understand how an ESA would work, and therefore low socioeconomic parents or demographics would not benefit from this. That is such an absolutely ridiculous statement to assume that a parent doesn't want what's best for their child, or even worse, assumes that the parent can't access that information. It's absolutely mind-blowing and ridiculous. And it's why we fight to do what we do. Is that I was quoted in the paper this morning, actually, that at AFP, we don't just work on electing policy champions. We also work year-round to ensure that parents are connected to what's happening so that they have that information, they can access the opportunities for their kids, and they can hold their legislator accountable. We work around the clock, not just to get people elected, but to ensure communities are better equipped with opportunities to make better decisions.
Yeah. Well, that argument that you described is such an elitist, sort of paternalistic argument that, parents won't know what's best. I mean, come on, parents, who knows better than a parent about what's best for their child? No one. Exactly. So, well, listen, Genevieve, if there's a family in Texas that supports ESAs, and what's the best way that they can voice their support or get involved with you?
Well, they can go to our website, www.freedomisbigger.com. So here across the state of Texas, we believe that freedom is bigger in Texas, and we're going to work to ensure that it becomes that way. And so any parent can sign a petition to make sure that their voice is heard and counted. You can visit our website, freedomisbigger.com, and sign that petition. You can also share your personal story, and you can become an ambassador to the state of Texas, where we would love to welcome you to the platform where you can share your story and really empower your community to join you and really talk about what makes Texas great, and that school choice will make Texas an even better place to live, work, raise a family, and contribute to the future.
Genevieve, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. This is great news for families in Texas, and it's just such a great story. And, I just have to congratulate you on the determination that you and your team showed through this. And, because of your determination, the kids of Texas are going to have a little more freedom and a little more liberty.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I think it's just a moment to really, I can't take all the credit. So much goes to my team, but if you make any of us, if you make any of us mad, you make us all mad. And God have mercy on your soul if you make AFP and Libre mad.
That sounds great. Genevieve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, you bet. This is just another example. And we've talked about ESAs, educational savings accounts, how they are empowering parents all across America. And, the day has arrived. We talked about education reform in K through 12 education for decades, and it just ground and it never really went anywhere. And now it's upon us, and it is happening in state after state. And I would say to states that haven't decided to pass ESAs, your day's coming, because you will be left behind if you don't do it. You need to do what Genevieve and her team in Texas did, and the state of Texas and the governor of Texas did for the kids of Texas. You need to do that very same thing for you, the children of your state. All right. Thank you for joining us on another episode of American Potential.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.